Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about and define what is a traditional Catholic. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Clearly, this is a traditional Catholic channel, and we have episodes that kind of present things from the trad cath point of view, but I thought it'd be good to do a definition of what it is, because I understand that some people who come to this channel maybe don't have that background, or there's some Protestants, or there's some more, liberal Catholics. So what is a traditional Catholic? I think a traditional Catholic, and again, I have to make kind of vast generalizations, because if someone were to ask you, what is an American or what's a liberal, there's going to be some generalizations. So the things that I mentioned, I wouldn't say like every trad cath adheres to, but if I had to delineate a sketch, I would say that trad caths kind of look to the 2,000 years of Catholic history as how to model their life. And so we can look at forms of religious piety, for example. We look at the types of mass that they're going to gravitate toward. We look at social conservative issues. We look at dress and so forth. So a traditional Catholic, first of all, would typically go to a traditional Latin Mass, or maybe an ordinary to the Chair of St. Peter, which is essentially has the vestiges of the TLM, but is in English. They typically will tend to practice some of the religious piety practices of the past, like the Rosary, which has been done, at least in its modern form, for 800 years. They tend to do novenas. They tend to embrace maybe more religious processionals. They tend to be more involved in Eucharistic adoration. We talk about adoration, that episode, three practices that Protestants think are weird. So they would tend to practice more fasting, maybe the Friday all year round fasting, as opposed to the post-Vatican II concession of only doing it during Lent. So these are kind of the outward signs of worship. I would tell you probably that they tend to dress better at Mass. You'll see a higher proportion of the women wearing chapel veils. Men will be wearing suits and so forth. I think if you look at communion on the tongue, this is going to be much more common with the traditional Catholics than you would see with the regular. And when I say regular, I guess the regular ones would be going to Novus Ordo Masses, or the new Mass that was implemented and rolled out in 1969. So kind of when we juxtapose the two, so the traditional Catholics either go to churches where you have no choice and you have to take it on the tongue by kneeling, or if they do go to a Novus Ordo Mass, they are going to kneel or take it in the tongue. I think I had to pause it because they started playing music here, which you get the YouTube copyright infringement here. What else? So traditional Catholics would adhere more to the church's teaching on social conservative issues. So whereas perhaps the Novus Ordo Catholic will adhere more to like the cafeteria Catholic approach of abortion, contraception, sterilization, and so forth. The traditional Catholics tend to have a very kind of binary view, which all these things are wrong. So we did that episode on disturbing statistics about the church, where we talked about, as a Pew Research study, that self-identifying Catholics, they believe that 70% of them didn't believe in the real presence, something like 50% of them supported gay marriage, and so forth. Whereas if you juxtapose that with traditional Catholics, that is going to be like 99% believe in the real presence, 98% don't agree with contraception, and so forth. So traditional Catholic as a whole tends to be a social conservative and tends to be in line with what the church teaches on those issues. I think in general, the regular Novus Ordo Catholics have embraced more of the kind of modernism view of things, where things are living documents, or what is the spirit of the Bible now, or what is the spirit of Vatican II teaching us. And this is something that goes back to the Syllabus of Errors back in the mid-19th century, and certainly Pope Pius X talked about it, St. Pius X, I should say, talked about it when he made all the priests do an oath against modernism, was this kind of idea of everything is living and adaptable and so forth. And you saw that theology very common in the mid 20th century. And Tradcats don't believe in that. Tradcats believe in sacred tradition. If this is the way it's always been, this is the way it should be. So in general, I think these are all kind of classic definitions of traditional Catholic. I think most traditional Catholics look askance or worrisome of like any innovation that has occurred post 1965. They're kind of like, I'll defer to the older way, the ways we've been doing it for hundreds of years. So you see in some Novus Ordo churches, and not so much now, but certainly 20 years ago when I was in college, I went to a Catholic university. You saw the liturgical dances, the people dressed up in pantomime doing the Our Father. You'd see a lot of these kind of strange experimentations with the liturgy. And as a whole, I think most traditional Catholics don't like that. They like the solemnity and the timelessness of the TLM or even the Ordinariate, because, and I have this episode like why I'm attracted to the Latin Mass. It's one of my early episodes and why I do my prayers in Latin. When I go to these Masses, it connects me to the past, right? So if I go to a Latin Mass, or if I'm doing my rosary in Latin, this connects me to Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross and St. Ignatius. I'm going to the same Mass, essentially, that Carlos Borromeo went to, or Bellarmine, or any saint you want to pick, Little Flower, or Padre Pio, the Masses they went to, right? So when you're doing a rosary or going to these Masses, it ties you to these Catholic greats of the past and just the regular Catholics that passed the Mass, or passed their faith from generation to generation. So I think these are just some reasons and some definitions as a whole. I would say that as a whole, Tradcats tend to be obedient to the Church's teaching. We have an episode here, there's no such thing as a liberal Catholic, and we talk about how kind of the parsing and picking and choosing of doctrine. Tradcats as a whole are just obedient to the church founded by Jesus Christ, and they try to put its will in front of their own will. That's not to say Tradcats are perfect, okay? They're not. There's glad trads, there's mad trads, there's rad mad trads. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm just trying to give you kind of a composite sketch as to what a traditional Catholic is and kind of their mindset is. As a whole, the traditional Catholics I know are not angry, they're not conspiratorial. This is kind of the view that the left likes to do about those who go to TLM. Most of them are just good people who love their faith. That's two other things I like to add. Most Tradcats know the history of the church better. They tend to be better read than the Novus Ordo kind of moderate or liberal Catholics. Also, they tend to have bigger families, right? If you go to Our Lady of Suburbia, as Father McTeague likes to call it, and you go to the typical Catholic parish, you're not going to see a lot of big families. You go to a TLM or an Ordinariate, it's just, I sit behind families that have like 6 kids and the woman's pregnant and she's like 36. Now some of you would be like, oh my God. Yeah, but that's the way it used to be, right? So these are just kind of some of the things you're going to see. They appreciate the solemnity and the timelessness of the TLM. They tend to be social conservatives. They tend to like to do a daily rosary. They tend to maybe even do the Liturgy of the Hours. Again, there's a lot of different kind of iterations. Lastly, not all Trad Catholics would go to a TLM or an Ordinariate service. Some of them either can't, or they do go to the Novus Ordo parish near them. I do know traditional Catholics who identify themselves as traditional Catholics who go to that Mass, and that's fine. That's fine. You can always pick out, like I'll go to a daily Mass at a NO, at a Novus Ordo Mass or parish, and I can always pick out the traditionalists, because the women are wearing chapel veils, they dress totally different. So in the parts of the Mass where you have to hold hands, they're not holding hands, and so forth. And look, we don't have time, but Annabelle Bonini, who was the main architect of the Novus Ordo Mass, he even admitted, and you can find this on record, he says it, that one of the reasons he made the changes he did to the new Novus Ordo Mass was to make it more appealing to the Protestants. So these are just a couple of things, guys. Please post in the comments. Let me know if you identify as a traditional Catholic or not, and if you have any issues with traditional Catholics. I'd like to hear from you. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with other people. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.